Be'ez Hashem Yisparach, we begin Perek Shmini, the 8th Perek in Hilchos Gerushin, the laws of divorce, in the Rambam Sefer Noshim, regarding the book of women. And in this Perek, the Rambam is going to be discussing regarding Gerushin al Tnai, divorce that comes with a stipulation, with a condition. As the Rambam opens up in Halacha Aleph regarding some general terms and definitions. It says, Hamagarish al Tnai, if someone gives a divorce on condition, so im niskam at Tnai, if the condition is fulfilled, how is a Magash, then she's divorced. If the condition is not fulfilled, and the Magash is not divorced. Ram says we already explained this in the 6th Perek in Hilchos Ishes and Halacha Beis. Mishpatei Hatzanim Kulam, all the statutes of conditions. For Shamas Baran, there was explained Shamagarish al Tnai, that if someone divorces on condition, Kishayskayim at Tnai, when the condition is fulfilled, Tia Magareshes B'Shah Shayiskayim, she's going to be divorced at the moment that the condition is fulfilled. Not the moment that she received the document of the divorce in her hand. Now, therefore, so not only do you have to fulfill the condition, it's when the condition is actually fulfilled that's when the get is actually going to be chal and it's going to take effect. So the Rambam has a ramification from that. Yes, so the husband could nullify the get, or to add on to the conditions, or to make some other stipulation condition, as long as the first condition was not fulfilled, even though the get reached her hand, doesn't make a difference. The get didn't take effect, and therefore you could still go ahead and change things around. Then let's say the husband died, or the get was lost, or got burned, and all these things are obviously integral for when the divorce document has to take effect. If any of these things happen, before the condition was fulfilled, in the Megresh, she's not divorced, because although she got the get, she's just waiting to fulfill the condition, but it wasn't effective yet until that actually happens. And therefore, initially she should not get married, and because we're all concerned the husband might die, the get might get burnt or something like that, and retroactively it's going to come out that she was always married at that up until that point because she was never divorced. Until the condition is fulfilled, only then should she get married. But if she did get married, then she doesn't have to leave that second marriage. As the Rambam explains importantly in the next parak, he says because someone that does a gerushin, a divorce al tnai, on condition, there is somewhat of a gerushin over there. It's just not complete until the stipulation, until the condition is done. Because she already got the get in the context of gerushin. So that's why the Rambam holds that if she got married before the condition is fulfilled, that they don't have to leave. And however, that's why many disagree with the Rambam, and they hold that no, even if she got married, she has to be removed, because since she got married before the condition was fulfilled, and as the Rambam himself really in some way is saying that it's not really a gerushin until that's effective, so then she's an ish. And the fact what she's having relations with the second man is in znus, and therefore it's going to be forbidden. But the Rambam says that no, it's somewhat of a get, and therefore if she got married, although she shouldn't, they don't have to leave, unless there is no ability at all to fulfill the condition. For example, let's say you stipulated, this you get if you give me that vessel, and that got lost, as the Rambam explains later in Halacha Gimel, so it then would be impossible to fulfill it. Then, of course, they cannot remain remarried, but let's not, because then the condition has been voided, and there's no get here at all. And says the Rambam also, B'Shem Nizbar, there in Halacha Tazayin, the Rambam says, we explain, Shem Amala, that if he told her, so what the Rambam just said up until now was a regular type of a condition. Where, okay, then the divorce only when the condition is fulfilled. But there are differences if, let's say, he says it in a different way. Let's say he tells her, you're divorced from now or from today, al tanai kach v'kach, on the condition that such and such happens. But when that happens, it's actually from today. Or he tells her, you are divorced on the condition that so and so happens. In other words, his intention is it's now, but there's a condition that something has to happen. So in those cases, it's now when the condition is fulfilled, then she's actually divorced from the moment that the get is given to her hands, because it's really happening now. Just there's a condition that has to be fulfilled. In those cases, he could not nullify the get. And neither could he add on to the conditions. The moment the get comes to her hand, that's really when the get is happening, retroactive, when the condition is being fulfilled. So to Vim Avad, if let's say it gets lost, or it gets burnt, the get, or even if the husband dies, before the condition is fulfilled, she can fulfill the condition after he dies. Although you can't do a get after the husband's death, but the get really took effect from the moment she got it. There's a condition that's stipulated to that, and therefore that can be done even after that he's dead. She could initially even get married, even though the condition was not fulfilled, because we're not suspecting that she's going to ruin herself. And whatever condition she's able to fulfill, we're confident that she will, and it's going to be a retroactive get from right now. Because yes, in contrast, if let's say it's a condition that's not in her ability, it's dependent on other parties and other factors, then we are concerned actually that it might not be fulfilled, and actually she would be initially forbidden to get married. But in this case, we're not concerned that maybe she's not going to fulfill the condition. Since the condition was really from right now and on the condition, so even if the get would be lost or the husband would die, she's already divorced from right now when it was given to her. And therefore, all she has to do is fulfill that condition. So we're not concerned something happening that's regarding the actual divorce itself, because it's really happened already now. In contrast to, let's say, she's divorced with a regular condition where, again, that he didn't say me'achshav, where there the Rambam says she cannot initially get married because then we're concerned the husband might nullify it, or he might die, or the get might get lost, or might get burned, and then it's going to come out retroactively, she was really neshesish. Then we say that she cannot get married in contrast to this case. Halacha beis. But it says around anyone who makes a divorce with a condition, bein shama me'achshav, whether he says from now, bein shama whether he says im yeh v'im lo yeh, that if it will be or will not be, meaning if you'll give me 200 zuz, you'll be divorced. If not, you won't be divorced, which that's important for Tanai Kafel, if it's a regular type of a condition. Either way, whenever you're making it the Gerushin al Tanai, he should not be secluded with his wife, as long as the condition was not yet fulfilled, because of the fact that he's not allowed to be with a woman that's not his wife. Only if it's in front of a witness, even if it's a slave or a maidservant, except if it's her maidservant or her minor son, because then the whole point of the Eid Echad here is not really as testimony, is just to stop them from secluding and being intimate, because here we are relying on a get that's really waiting to take effect, and so it's about stopping them, but from her maidservant or her minor child, she's not embarrassed to have intimacy in front of them. And it's known, says the Rambam, that if she does seclude with him in front of two witnesses as one, meaning two witnesses at the same time see him secluding with his wife, and even if they didn't come into the room, then even if the condition will be ultimately fulfilled, it's only going to be doubtful if she's divorced, and that's why we say not to be secluded with her, because if he is secluded with her, and there are two witnesses who saw that, again, it can only be with her if there's someone there that's at least one person that sees them and they're going to stop them. But if there's not one person there and two people see that this is done, so then now even if the condition is fulfilled, we're not sure if she's divorced, because Shema Ba'alam, because maybe he cohabited with her for the purposes of getting married to her, Uvata get, and thus nullifying the original get when he went, and what we're concerned for was subsequently Mekadosh her with his bia, and therefore we're going to require another get out of doubt. Like we explained in these halachas later on Paragud on Locha Yudches, that what we know is the witnesses who see them be secluded are like almost testifying that they had cohabitation, and therefore to prevent that, he shouldn't be secluded with her, because there is a get here, we're just waiting for it to follow through. The problem is we're not going to be able to rely on that anymore if they're secluded, because it could be had bia, and then thus nullifying the first get. So it's going to be, if he is going to seclude with her, it's going to be a situation of something megureshes. Halacha Gimel. Now the Rambam says, how should a person do it? If he wants to divorce her with a condition, there's some conditions attached to it, how should he do it? Says the Rambam, not that he should say, okay, write a get for my wife on this condition, or write it and give it to her on condition. That should not be said like that. For sure, we don't have to tell you that he shouldn't write this in the get itself. No, on this condition, this man is divorcing this woman, because on all the cases we just mentioned, essentially he's retaining rights in her after the get is given. And the Torah tells us, Sefer Kris has to be a document that totally severs the relation between the husband and the wife, and there shouldn't be any connection. But the way he just said up until now, she's connected him through the condition. Rather, what should he do? Regular procedure of a get. Tells the scribe to write, tells the witness to sign. And you write a bona fide get, whether orally or when it's written, without any conditions at all. And the reason for that is because since the primary get is going to be valid in the way it's supposed to be, so there's no more connection between him and her. But then when he's giving her the get, then he tells her, so the actual document is okay. But then he tells her, this is your get, Or you divorce with this, on the condition of such and such. Or you should tell them, or to the agent, Tanula gets it, give her this get, with this stipulation. So it's the actual nesina that's going to be a stipulation. But the get itself, the gerushin, is a totally dava hakaris. Now, halacha dal continues on this theme. Let's say he writes a stipulation in the divorce document. After that, he finished writing the primary, essential, unique part of the get, which is for the unique parties that are in, which is the primary element of, instead of the standard text, is the distinct part of the text. So here's a get kasha. So since it's not in the Torah part, it's going to be a valid document of a get. Whether it was written before the witness is signed, or whether it's a part of the get after the witness is signed, and that's because, again, the primary get, which is the Torah, was written kosher without any stipulations. Now, but it was written, this condition, before the primary, this man, this woman, this town, that town, before that Torah was written. So then then even if he writes on the stipulation of such and such, what we mean by that is because that is in essence, in the laws of stipulation, that is valid for the laws of gerushin. In contrast, as we're going to see in the next halacha, if the stipulation is in the words of like chutz, which that totally invalidates the get, even if it's just oral and even if it's not written at all, because it's an intrinsic invalidation in what gerushin is. So even though it's a kosher stipulation, but since it's written before the Torah, harez a sefek gerushin, so now it's a doubtful divorce. Shari initially is chus b'gufish get, because he retains rights in the document of the get itself. Because as long as it's mentioned before the Torah, whether orally or whether, as the Ram had first opened up with, or in writing, so then the writing of the get was not written in the total severance of their relationship. And so if he stipulates even orally, but before the writing of the Torah, again, it's a doubtful gerushin, and therefore, again, the Ram had said it should only be done, whether in writing or in orally, after everything was already done, preferably as it's being given to the woman. Now, halacha hey, the Ram continues regarding conditions that limit the woman's rights to subsequently remarry. If someone divorces his wife, and he stipulates on her, whether it's in writing in the document itself, but it's again after the Torah itself, and even if he doesn't mention this when he's giving it to her, but it's written there, or whether orally he says this, but again after the Torah is written, again, so here, it's not an intrinsic problem, and in general, this case is only if he's telling the Torah at the time of the Nesina, as Ram says later on, Lachat Zayin. But v'amala, so this is okay in the sense of regarding the act of stipulation, which is what we mentioned in previous halacha, like amanas kach v'kach. So that would be okay if it was after the Torah, whether orally or written. But here in this halacha, the Ram says, but v'amala, here he says it differently, which is a problem. He says, hareid materes l'chol adam, which is the general freeing text of the Torah, you're permitted to every single man, chutz meish plani, except, and that's the highlighted word, chutz meish plani, except for that man. Oy elalish plani, or which means the same thing, or not for that man. And he gives the get with this stipulation. So it depends. What does it depend on? Because if that man that he's saying, you're permitted to everyone because I'm divorcing you, except for that man who's a non-Jew or a slave, who they can't have kedushin with a Jewish woman anyway. Or the man he's forbidding her to get married is anyways a man that's forbidden to her because of the forbidden relationships mentioned in the Torah on Karas, for example, or her father, her brother, or his father, or his brother, which anyway kedushin is not teifus, because kedushin not teifus be'erva. It comes out that he's not really leaving over anything in the get, because anyways she's not permitted to them. How does he get kosher? Then it's a bona fide get, because he's not really doing anything with that stipulation. But let's say that man that he's forbidding her to get married to, kedushin would take effect. Oh, then even though the Torah makes a negative prohibition on that man, but kedushin is teifus. And even if it's a minor who cannot do kedushin until he becomes an adult. But in the get, it's not going to be a get, sharish get, because he is leaving over something here. It's not totally a severance in the get. Veins it creases, and therefore it's not going to qualify for creases. And that is what we know as the conditions of chutz, which does invalidate because he's leaving over something in the severance that she's not permitted to every single person. In contrast, when they say amanas, so that's not leaving over anything in the severance. He's totally permitting her to marry whoever she wants to. He's just stipulating an extrinsic stipulation, not to marry that person, but that's like a regular stipulation, not leaving over anything in the get itself. Now, says the Rambam, let's say the man he's forbidding her to get married is her brother-in-law, her sister's husband. Now, although that today, when her sister's alive, her brother-in-law is forbidden to her because of an erva of of a chais ishtoi, which is the man's forbidden in his wife's sister, but if Thomas yimutala, but if her sister dies, who is his current wife, she would actually be permitted to him. So that's like, so it comes, it is somewhat of a leaving over that it's not a full-fledged krisis. Sorry, this is something because that's a case where it's doubtful if that's considered gerushin or not. It's not clear-cut either way or the other regarding to this halacha, if it's forbidding her on someone that anyways is forbidden, or that it's not. Halacha vav, Amala, let's say he tells her, okay, you're permitted to every single person, except for someone that's going to be born that's not yet now in the world. Or someone that you're going to have that's considered znus for you. In other words, you're going to be permitted to every single person to get married. But for znus, that would be considered not just a prohibition of znus, which is having relations not through marriage, but you're going to be considered as if you weren't divorced for that man. Actually, would be a prohibition of eshes is. Or he says like this: you're permitted to you can marry whoever you want to, as long as they're going to have natural relations with you. Vaginal relations. But if they're going to have anal relations in the unnatural way, then you remain prohibited. For that, I'm not divorcing you. Or a different way. You're permitted to every single man, except if you have kedushin with a document. In other words, there's three ways to do kedushin. And he says you're permitted to get married to whoever you want to, if it's done with monies or with cohabitation. But if that guy is going to do it with a document, then for that I'm not divorcing you, then you retain your Isser Beishes. Or another case, you're permitted to every single person, except for the nullification of your vows, which the husband has the rights. In other words, he's saying, for that, you're right, I'm not retaining any rights of a husband for you, except I want to hold on to the rights which the husband does have to nullify your vows. Regarding nullifying your vows, you are my wife. Is truma regarding eating truma, which he's a kohen, and when he divorces her, so she's going to be forbidden to partake in the truma, but a wife is permitted. So he's saying that through the kedushin that she's going to be able to eat, that he's holding on to that right regarding the husband's ability to feed the wife truma. Or he holds on regarding the inheritance, meaning shemesa, that if she's going to die, he'll inherit her as the husband. Says Rambam, anyone in these cases we just described, it's a doubt if she is divorced, which I'm not sure about this because on some level it is a full severance. It's just that how it's going to happen. Okay, so with kesef and bia, but not with shtar, but you are totally divorced. Is that a stipulation or is that a chutz? The Rambam not clear about that, and therefore it's considered a doubtful gerushin. Because again, almanas works, a chutz doesn't work. In these cases are somewhere in between. Halacha Zayin. Let's say it tells Harit Mates L'Chadam. Okay, you permit it to every single person. Chutz Meruv Mishim, except Ruv Mishim, which again that does not work as we said in the previous halachas. But v'chaz v'amala, then he subsequently tells her, meaning he takes back the gift from her and he gives it to her a second time, and he says, Harit Mates L'Ruv Mishim, you're permitted for Ruv Mishim. Raise a aggression, and she's divorced. Shabitel T'nai. Essentially, he's nullifying that stipulation. Shanoshim shehisnu b'hem hitirla. Because the men that he'd stipulated that she's forbidden to, he permitted her to. In other words, we don't say that the second time he's saying that, you permit only to these two and you're forbidden to everyone else. No, we're saying he's permitting what he had originally made forbidden. Let's say he tells her, meaning this, where he had originally told her, except for Reuben and Shimon, he says, Harit Materis to Reuben. No, you know what, you're permitted to Reuben. Harit in Magesh, she's not divorced. Surely Beetle Noach Shimon, because he didn't nullify the other guy of Shimon, and it's still a chutz it's not a full-fledged krisis. Let's say he tells Harit Materis to Shimon, no, you're permitted to Shimon. Or he says, you're permitted even to Shimon. This is already doubtful if it is a valid gerushin, because Shimon maybe he's only permitting her to Shimon. The Reuven, the first guy, he retains the prohibition. This is saying even for Shimon, which that would sound like that. And Reuven, in other words, no, it means means every person like I originally done, and even Shimon. We're not sure. Maybe he is permitting her to everyone. This is saying also for Shimon. It means Reuven. It means and the first guy also to Reuven. Shimon some Reuven, but not because Shimon was after the mentioning of Reuven. So maybe it is, maybe it's not, and therefore because of that it's a Safek gerushin. And so to Shimon itself would sound like the second guy and for sure the first guy, but we're not sure, so therefore it's a Safek gerushin. Halacha Ram continues regarding stipulations in the get, where he doesn't set a set time for the completion of those conditions. Says Ram Hisna Leva Amma, let's say stipulation and he says like this. He says, at ishti, today you're not my wife, but tomorrow you will be my wife. Saying Magesh, not divorced. And the chiddush is, even though he made a full severance for today, we don't say, okay, if she's separated today, then she's separated forever. No, because he says, but the day after you are married. So the figure actually, therefore, says the Rambam, because we're writing divorce documents for this reason, min hayom hazel l'olam, from today and forever. In other words, really, according to the Brahma halacha, if you don't specify, it's as if you're saying it's forever. But because of this concern, they instituted to write this wording to clearly indicate that it's not hayom and not tomorrow, that rather it's for all time. Let's make a mixed condition. This is your get on the condition that you don't drink wine for the rest of your life. Saying the get, that's not a valid get. Why? Shane's a crease is not a severance. Because she's totally connected with him for the rest of her life. She could or could not do something because of him. Let's say he says, however, kol yimei chaya, all the days that I'm alive, or kol yimei chaya, playing all the days that that person's alive, I raise a get. That's a valid get. Sheri cars because between him and her they're totally separated. And he has no dominion over her when that person dies, and therefore it's a secondary thing, which is extrinsic, and therefore it's not that she for the rest of her life is always connected to him. That person might outlive her, but not necessarily, and therefore that's a valid stipulation. Halacha Yidalf. Let's say this is your get. On the condition you don't go to your father's house for a period of 30 days. So raise a get. So that's a valid get because after 30 days he has no rights over her, and she could fulfill that condition. Therefore, we're not concerned that maybe that she's not going to be able to hold out. So it's a valid get. But let's say in the condition that you never go to your father's house ever again, and again, it's not a valid get. Shari increases because that's not considered a severance because all the days she's alive, she cannot fulfill the condition. That's a condition that she has to fulfill, and therefore she's always connected for the rest of her life, not going to her father's house. Now the figure, therefore, if someone says, this is your get, on the condition you don't eat meat forever, or this meat, or not to drink wine or drink this wine forever, and again, it's not valid get. It's not total severance because for the rest of her life, she knows she can't have this because of him. But let's say let's say only for a period of 30 days. Or is a get? That's a valid get because it's a get right now because it's something that it's not an infinite thing, and therefore it's totally severing them. It's just something considered as a secondary thing. Halach Yud Beis. Let's say he says this is your get. I'm anosh to nasle playing the condition you don't get married to that person, and I guess it's not a get. As Rambam says, what could this be compared to? He tells her, this is a get. It's like what we said in the previous lives, like on the condition you don't drink wine forever, or that you never go to your father's house, or all the time that you're alive. Meaning, even though in a way, not to get married to that person is only as long as that person's alive. So you would think to say that maybe it's similar to not to drink wine as long as that person is alive, which is a get, as Rambam said, halacha yud. No, the reason is because over there, that wine is only forbidden as long as that person is alive. It comes out that the wine's not always going to be forbidden to her, but here the marriage to this person is always forbidden to her, and she can never be permitted to that person, and therefore that would be considered as noilamas type of its not, which again is not severing the relationship between him and her. Now, but let's say he tells her, even though it's a long period of time, on the condition you don't get married to him for the next 50 years, raise a get. Again, that's going to be a valid get. And then she cannot get married to him for that time that was stipulated, but to others she's allowed to get married right away. And we're not concerned that maybe she's going to get married to that person because, again, she would only do it with consent and she wouldn't ruin herself because that would mean she was always married and it wasn't a fulfillment of the condition. Then this is, and if she actually gets married within those 50 years, then both like it's mafreya. Then the get is nullified retroactively. Zansi, let's say that man who he's obviously has something against that man and he's only divorcing her on the condition, but let's say she doesn't marry him, but Zansi, she actually has extramarital relations with him. Havalid kosher, so the child's going to be okay, going to be valid. Vaget kosher, and the get's also going to be kosher. Why? Because the stipulation was only regarding marriage. She didn't marry him, and therefore that won't be a nullification of the get. So she is considered divorced, albeit having znus with the man, but it won't be considered as that of an eshes. Halacha Yigimel, the Rambam continues regarding stipulations regarding her marriage and regarding the actual document, the paper of the get itself. Says the Rambam, let's say he says, Hariza Gittich, this is your get. I'm a nasher to Nestle Plan. Condition you get married to that person. I'll divorce you, but you have to marry that person. See, so if she marries that person, Hariza Get, that's a fulfillment of the condition as a get. Kishak call it to them, like all other stipulations. Now, it says the Rambam, the sages said, Loiti nasi. She should not get married. Loi loisablan, not to that person that he stipulated. But loi lecha, not to someone else, as Rambam explains. Loisablan, she should not get married to that person. Shem because people might say, they give their wives as gifts to each other. Like, I'm divorcing you in the condition you're married to that man. Like as if, okay, I want to give that guy a gift. I'm going to give you as a gift. That's inappropriate. So we don't want you to fulfill that condition. Well, obviously you cannot marry anyone else. Shein a get, it'll become a because it's not a get unless you fulfill the condition, which is to marry that guy, and we don't want you to marry that guy. But let's say let's say she does violate the rabbinic injunction and she marries that guy. So then says the Rambam loy teitze, then she doesn't have to leave because ultimately the condition is fulfilled. And just because of the concern about inappropriate behavior, that's not going to make us remove her from that second husband. Now, but let's say nisis la'achar. Let's say she marries someone else before she marries that guy that he had stipulated. It's only if she marries that guy. So but lagat. So then that's a nullification because she didn't fulfill the condition, and the teitze she has to leave. Va'avolad mams, and the child she has from that husband is obviously illegitimate because she was always considered married. And she's going to have to, it actually requires a get from that second husband because of an appearance of wrongdoing, because it might look like a married woman leaving without a get because the fact that she got married to that person. In contrast to kedushin, as Rambam is going to mention at the end of the parak too, which that we just say, okay, obviously that it was a kedushin al tanai, and she didn't fulfill the kedushin. Here, once she gets married to someone that looks like it was a bona fide thing, and therefore she's going to require a get from the second person. Now, the Rabbit actually says that there is a way to rectify the child not to be a mamzer. How so? After the second husband divorces her, to go back to the one that he had stipulated she should marry, and then it's going to be get lavafreya. Oh, and then it's like get lavafreya. Then it was not a when she had married that second person. So it comes out retroactively, the child's not a mamzer. The only problem with that is that she cannot remarry that second husband, because then he's going to be machzik rishasim and asuin from that other guy that she married in the interim. So she wouldn't be able to get remarried to that husband. Now, however, the Rambam doesn't say this because he holds that the intent of the megarish, and this is important, is that she should have initially married that guy, and therefore when she marries someone else first, so that's mevatel get, and there's nothing to do about it, and therefore she's considered forbidden to that husband, and the child is a mamzer. That's why the Rambam doesn't say the rectification of the right. Halacha Yidal, the Rambam continues, says, let's say I raise a gittar. Let's say this is your get, but the paper is mine. So in Megash, not divorced. In the because that's not considered severance because he's still holding on to the piece of paper itself. But let's say he says, on the condition that you give me back the paper, how is a get? So it's a get, and she gives it back to him because that's what's known as a matana matana. Yeah, at the time of the gerushin, it was her paper. She just has to give it back to him, and therefore it was gifted to her, and she's giving it back to him. Halacha tezvav. Chakak get al tashel zav. Let's say he carves out the get on a golden plate. When the son-in-law gives her the plate, he says to her, I'm killing two birds with one stone. This is your get and your ksuba, because it's obviously valuable. It's a plate made out of gold. So it says, Rambam, that's valid. And the skablik ksubasa, and she has considered received her ksuba. Imyesh pataska, the ksubasa. Obviously, if the plate has the value of a ksuba, it's considered the ksuba. V'mlav, if it's not, then yashim ksubasa, he has to supplement and complete the amount of the ksuba. Allah Tazan, the Rambam continues regarding either nullifying the condition or changing the condition. Says the Rambam, Kolam Garshal Tanai, anyone who divorces on the condition, Shemavatal Haget, which that nullifies the get. Kigain, for example, Shehisnala, he stipulates with her, it says on the condition that you don't eat meat, you don't drink wine, as long as you're alive, which the Rambam said in Allah Chayav, that condition voids the get, because that's not a creases. Oh, well, let's say Shetima Tesla Adam Chutz Meplan, he says you're permitted to everyone except, and the word in Chutz is important, except for that person. Or even if the regular valid conditions of Amanas, but he does it before the writing of the type. So, if that stipulation was written in the get, which all these conditions are voiding the get, so if it was in the get itself, but then he says we're going to erase that, because that obviously cannot go, because it's not going to be a valid get. When the son, then he gives it to her, it's doubtful if it's a valid gerushin, because although it's not here when he's giving it to her, but the primary part of the get, which is the type, was written invalid, because he had retained a merit in the get when he was writing it, and if it's not a creases, so it's doubtful if it's okay. Now, but if let's say the condition was oral when he was giving it to her, so although that invalidates it, but it invalidates the gerushin, not the get itself, it's not written in the get. So in this case, there is a net like remember what he should do is to take the get back from her, and then give it back to her without any stipulations, word of mouth stipulation, and then it's going to work. As Ram says, Allah in Kate said, how so? Someone gives a get to his wife, and he tells her, you're divorced with this, and you're permitted to every single person, except for that person, again, which that voids the whole get. So if he takes it back from her and then gives it back, then he says to her, and that's all he says, you're permitted to every single person. This is your get. So like we said in the previous halacha, so then she's going to be considered as divorced, and anything that's similar to these types of cases. Now, but if he doesn't take it back from her, he just says, So then obviously that's not going to have to validate the get because she already merited in this invalid get, which is still somewhat of a get that invalidates her from kahuna, like the concept of reich haget. So once she acquired it, he cannot fix it by creating a new stipulation or non-stipulation until he takes it back from her and then gives it to her again, and then it's going to be a new get without these invalidating conditions. Halacha yidchas. On this example, if someone gives a get to his wife, al tanai shatit l'masayim zuz, on the condition that she gives him 200 zuz, then the chazer, then he retracts before he goes back before she fulfills the first condition. And then he makes another condition in front of witnesses. Meaning, even though he already given the get to her, but he could still add on or change the condition because this is not talking about when he says almanas, rather imyiyah, which the Rambam mentioned halacha aleph, that he could stipulate any other condition as long as the condition has not been fulfilled, even though she got the get, so he could still change. So he goes and makes another condition in front of two witnesses. So instead of said on the condition that she gives him 200 zuz, he says on the condition that you serve my father 2 years. So says the Ram, so his later condition has not nullified his first condition. It's like as if he's telling her, you could do either one of these two conditions. Just in the sense, if she wants, she could serve the father. If she wants, she could give the money. But, says the Ram, you can't have one witness from the first stipulation and one witness from the later stipulation to be mitzarfen to combine together to say that there is a condition in this get. You have to have two of either one of them. Now, but an exception to this rule of the primary halacha, says the Ram, let's say he stipulates on her that it's a get only if she gives him 200 zuz. And then he goes and stipulates again in front of two witnesses. That she should give him 300 zuz. So then, so obviously that's nullifying the stipulation of 200 because obviously it's the same context. And he's not giving her a choice 2 or 3 because who's going to give 3, and she has to give 300 zuz because again he could still change it as long as the condition wasn't fulfilled. Or anything is similar to this, if it's the same idea, obviously it's not giving a choice; it's changing it on upping the requirements. Now, look at the Rambam talks about regarding fulfilling the condition. Let's say let's say he stipulates that she should do something, some generic thing, but unspecified. It's like he's specifying that it should be done for 1 day. He didn't specify how long it has to be done. As Rambam says, Ketzad Haso. Let's say he tells her, this is you get on the condition that you do with me work. Or on the condition that you serve my father. On the condition that you nurse my child. If she did work with him, or she served his father 1 day, or if she nursed his son 1 day during the time period which is when a child has to be nursed, which is within 24 months of birth, or is it get? She did it even 1 day, it's considered a get. Now, but let's say the child died, or the father died, before she was able to nurse or serve him, so then, and again, it's not going to be valid as a get because she didn't fulfill the condition. She can't say, give me the son, I'll nurse him, because it's not about that. It's about if you did this. If you didn't do it, then it's not a get. Halacha Chav says, let's say he tells her, the condition that you nurse my son, or you serve my father, he specifies. How long? 2 years. Sorry, she has to fulfill the amount of time that he specified. Now, let's say let's say the father or the child died within that time period. Or let's say the father says, I don't want you to serve me. And again, it's not a valid get. Again, because she did not fulfill the condition, since he specified how long, is his intention that that's how long he wanted her to pay, and if she didn't fulfill it, then it's not a get. All cases that are similar to this would have the same halacha. Halacha Aleph. Let's say it says, this is your get. The condition you give me 200 zuz from today until 30 days. So if she gives it to him within 30 days with his consent, then she's divorced. After 30 days, in immigration, she's not divorced. Let's say she gives it within 30 days, but against his will, he doesn't want to receive that monies. So a get puzzle, and the wording is specific, it's rabbinically an invalid get, until she gives it to him with his consent. Because regarding the prohibition of Isha Sish, of a married woman, we have to be concerned for that opinion, although we don't really hold like that, but regarding such a severe halacha, that Nesina Balkarche, giving someone something against their will, is not considered giving. So although she's fulfilling the condition, if he's not agreeing, so rabbinically we consider it as invalid until she gives it to him with his consent. Now let's say within the 30 days, he goes, you know what, forget about it. I'm moichel you. I pardon you from the obligation of giving me the money that I said that the get will be dependent on. Says the Rambam, in immigration, she's not divorced. Because the condition was not fulfilled. Now, if he totally nullifies the condition, as the Rambam is going to say in Halacha Chav Gimel, then she'll be divorced. But if he just says, I'm moichel you, it doesn't make it a moichel, she didn't fulfill the stipulation. Let's say he dies within 30 days. So since 30 days were complete, and ultimately she didn't give it, yes, she can because he's dead, but in immigration, she's not divorced. As Rambam continues, Halacha Chav Beis. Let's say he says to her, here's a gitach, this is your get, says on condition, you give me 200 zuz. But look how now he didn't set a time. And he dies before she could give it, like in the previous halacha of 30 days, but here she has an infinite amount of time, but he's dead. So she can't give it to his inheritors. His condition was only that she gives it to him, not to his inheritors. Now, but at the same time, interesting, says the Rambam the following idea. But for the batla get, the get is not nullified, surely covers money, because he didn't set a time. Now, although obviously technically you cannot fulfill the condition anymore because the husband's dead, but he didn't set a time for when that's to be given, and you cannot say that the get is batal, because if somehow he'd be alive, then she would be able to. So it keeps on going. You just technically can't do it. So the figures of the Rambam, therefore, a very interesting ramification. Even if the get gets lost, or it got torn before he died, it doesn't make a difference. She cannot marry if, let's say, her husband died without any children, and he left over a brother. She cannot marry anyone else, any foreigner, until the brother-in-law does chalitza for her, because the stipulation wasn't done. So she's not divorced, so she's still considered married to her husband, and she's still a zika, still a connection for yibum. But the problem is she can't do yibum either, because the get wasn't nullified. So it's like there is a partial get over here, so it's like doubtful if she's divorced. So therefore, he has to chalitza, which would mamavshach work either way. If she's considered married to chalitza, if it's not divorced, then anyway she doesn't need anything. But you cannot do yibum, so that's what she requires. She cannot marry anyone else until chalitza is done. Halacha of Gimel. Let's say it says, this is your get. I'm a nasha titnly kli plain. On the condition you give me that vessel, I beg it plainly, or that garment. Now, now that vessel or that garment gets lost, or nignum gets stolen. Even if she gives him 1,000 zuz for the value of that thing, which is worth $50, ain't a get. It's not a get. That's a tit nice clear. It's a big husband. So she fulfills the condition, which is that vessel or that garment, or until, and this is what we had referenced earlier, until he nullifies the condition, where he says it's your get without any condition. Then he doesn't have to take it back and give it to her, as we said this in Halacha Yud Zayin. If he just says Meichel, that's not good enough, because it's not fulfilling the condition. Until he actually nullifies the condition, then it'll be okay. Then it'll be a get without that. Now Halacha Abdal, the Rabbah continues regarding her doing kedushin with another man before the fulfillment of the condition. Says the Rambam Mishneh Torah. Someone gets divorced on a condition. Someone else does kedushin with her before the condition was fulfilled. So she got the get, but it's still dependent on some factors. Some other man does kedushin before the condition is fulfilled. So in this case, if ultimately the condition is fulfilled, then she's considered, she was already engaged already. She's already had kedushin done. Now, now if the condition was not fulfilled, and thus it comes out that the get is batal, so obviously she's not married to the second guy, but in the get machine, she doesn't even need a get from the second man. Shari in kedushin deficit, but because she was obviously considered married up until this point in time, and if she was married, so kedushin obviously did not take effect in the married woman. Now, obviously she's permitted to go back to the first husband, and we're not concerned that maybe they're going to say, oh, what do you mean? An Ashes Ish, a married woman is leaving without a get because she wasn't married. And therefore they're going to say, and this is an important concept, that, oh, there must have been a condition in the kedushin, and it wasn't fulfilled. Therefore that's why she's leaving. In contrast, but if she got married to that person, and they thought, of course, and the condition is not fulfilled, and never the get is batal, so obviously she was always an Ashes, and obviously he was not allowed to get engaged or for sure not get married to her. But in this case, tzricha get mesheni. Here, rabbinically, they require a get from the second man. Obviously, you don't really need a get because she wasn't married, but the people shouldn't say that a married woman is leaving without a get. And there you can't say a svara, oh, must have been kedushin al that only would work for kedushin, but for nisuin that wouldn't work. Like we explained previously in Halacha Yud Gimel, and therefore in this situation, rabbinically, they would require a get from that second husband.